on the Slip and Dip podcast.
Oh, beautiful, man. What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Slip and Dip channel. This isn't a full Slip and Dip podcast. This is more of a breaking news, live reaction sort of thing that we've started to do recently. Got my man Kendrick on the other side over there holding it down. What's going on, man?
Man, all these fights, man. I take a nap and you hit me on my phone, and people send me messages on Twitter. I'm like, all right.
Yes. Tons of fights announced tonight. Tons of fights announced. That's the main purpose of this stream tonight. And, of course, helping us break it all down. Breaking it all down is a good friend of ours. Holding it down from MMA Junkie, Mr. Dan Tom. What's happening?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Honored to be on the Slip and Dip podcast.
Oh, yeah. Again, not a full podcast. Live reaction sort of thing. Whatever we're going to call this thing.
Happy to talk with you guys.
Absolutely. So let's run through it. Basically, like I said, a ton of fights announced today, and we are going to basically kind of go in chronological order, I guess, is going to be the best way to do it, even though it's not necessarily in the most highest order of importance. But first up, announced today, going chronologically, on May 4th, UFC Ottawa, Cub Swanson returns against Shane Burgos. Did I say his last name right? Is it Burgos?
I think it's Burgos, but it could be Burgos.
All right, whatever, we'll take it. So, what's thoughts about seeing Cub Swanson coming back on a 3-fight losing streak, Kendrick?
It's sink or swim. The Cubs had a pretty good career. Can't say great because he's not a Hall of Famer, but he's had a solid MMA career. This would be his fight to decide if he needs to hang up the gloves.
Yeah, Dan, what do you think?
You know, I don't know. Initially, I feel bad because I'm a Cub fan, and I see the 3-fight losing streak, and you know he recently re-signed not too long ago, and it was a crucial signing, I would argue, even though he was coming off losses, he had some momentum. But at the same time, you know, as a fight fan, I love this fight. I love both these guys. You know, Burt Watson a year or two ago was sitting with him, and not to name drop, but it was relevant. As I really respect Burt. Obviously, he's been everywhere, and he's been working a lot of regional scenes since the UFC parted ways with him. And I asked, you know, Burt, is there any guys that you see out there that are coming up that you just know, you have that eye? And Burt said, this kid's Shane Burgos, man. This kid's Shane Burgos. And, we've seen it in his fights, whether he's getting his hair cut mid-corner, his ponytail chopped off, or just being a savage and waving guys on. It's a fun fight, and I love it. You know, you got boxing versus boxing, jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. It's going to be a war, so I'm definitely here for it. But I'm wishing Cub the best because it's a tricky point in his career.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Like I said, you losing 3 fights in a row in the UFC is never a good thing for anybody. Cub is the guy, though. I think he could lose 3 more fights and he'd still be in the UFC. He's that kind of guy with that kind of clout with his name. But it's like I think I'm leaning more to where Kendrick was saying. Like, this is pretty much a do or die, in my opinion.
Yeah. Just
because it's like, okay, you go out there and get this win over an up and comer, or you catch another L, and then maybe it's time to have that conversation. So, hopefully, for Cub's sake, he goes out there and handles business like we all know he can. So
yeah.
Or you're going to hear that song, you need to cut it.
Right. And that's interesting, though, because as bad as that could be, I wonder if that's a good thing because, I don't know how many fights he signed on for, but I think it was more than a realistic amount, let's just say, when you get later on in your career. So, I don't know exactly how the contract workings go, but maybe if they do cut him, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. We see Cub in like a PFL or something like that, able to maybe school some youngins and make some cash on his way out.
Oh, that would be nice if he went to the PFL and entered, their next little tournament or whatever they end up doing.
Yeah.
A huge payday on his way out. That'd be nice for him. Yeah.
Fan favorite, yeah.
All right, so moving on. Cub Swanson is returning May 4th. Moving on. Big fight. Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes at 135.
They will have a champ.
Really? Yeah. Now? Really?
I'm going to upset. He keep proving y'all wrong.
So here's one thing. A lot of people have forgotten that he has fought at 135. His first, fight in the UFC was at 135. So I remember that, actually. It was here in Dallas. So I remember that well. I think my initial reaction to this fight announcement, it wasn't a surprise because, hey, we all know how UFC likes to do things now. They're going to do things for what they think will do better at the box office, so to speak, right? A champ
Right.
fight is gonna sell more tickets, presumably. But for me, when you think about people saying that, hey, this is gonna be a save the flyweights type thing for Henry Cejudo, like we gotta save the flyweights. Well, how are you saving the flyweights when you're fighting at 135? That part doesn't make sense to me. So
We've had this discussion before, bro. It's mismanaged. Dan, I keep telling my co-host he don't want to listen to me. The reason the champ stuff is quote unquote played out is because the UFC F stuffs up and don't let these guys defend the belt. If they were defending the belt in multiple weight classes like they do in the other combat sports, it would be no problem. That's why it's quote unquote played out. Or you got make-believe divisions like you got on the women's side. That's why that's on the UFC for mishandling that.
There's definitely an argument for that, man. I mean, I don't know the inner workings when it gets down to it, but your point stands true, Kendrick, in the sense that, you know, if because I'm with you, that was a big thing, and I feel like the guys that you know were to be defenders of champs haven't gotten those spots. They would lose those fights, or when they get there, like a DC, they're having to go through so many injuries just to do it or not do it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You know, each situation to their own, obviously, guys, right? But there is a point to that. If it was managed better in a perfect world, yeah, perhaps, you know, people like myself and many others wouldn't have such a bad taste with the champ thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good because it doesn't make no sense when they're not defending it. So I can see why somebody like yourself and Matt, it's quote unquote played out, because I keep telling Matt if it was that easy, everybody would be a champ. But it doesn't mean nothing because they're not being able to defend their belts on whatever weight class. It's always a shit show. So that's what a problem, though.
Well, you know,
that's true.
That's got. There's a matchup later that's going to, I think, bring this argument right to the threshold. So I'll save some points when we get to that matchup as far as to why maybe champs could be watered down as well. But I will say, as far as this matchup goes, when we're talking about, guys, I just checked while we were talking. I didn't see a betting line, and that's what's curious to me. If I did have it, I was going to see what you guys thought it would be. But no pop quizzes in that regard. We're all kind of blank so far.
Yeah, no kidding. That's. I mean, I just don't like this whole idea, man. I'm tired of the champ thing, man. Like, okay, he defended his belt one time against TJ. Cool. Like, but that was also a champ fight. You know, so like let's have him fight a regular old contender, a Joseph Benavidez, who apparently is going to be defending like not defending, but he's going to be fighting a number one contender fight at 135 for a number one contender fight at 125. What is happening?
There's no criteria. There's no criteria with all this. Like Henry shouldn't qualify for this because he hasn't defended the belt. Monty Mouse got multiple defenses. You should have at least a stemmer, 5, whatever you want to pull out with before you can do the champ thing. That's another reason why it's played out.
and exactly. Yeah, this does add to it, Kendrick. I mean, you think about it too, like. As far as far as that goes, how many champions? Sorry, losing my track here, but like I'm just trying to do the math. I think we've had it maybe at heavyweight. I want to say perhaps at middleweight, but how many times? You know, you're right. Is there a legitimate contender? And I think what upsets people, guys, is that not so much the champ fights, but on the other end of it, the most deserving fighters, we reward them by having them face each other. And that's kind of like heartbreaking. We're like, really? Do these guys kind of have to face each other? And I can't think of the top of my head, but yeah, Benavidez and who he's paired up with kind of fits that bill. Hell, even Figueiredo Formiga kind of fit that bill this just last weekend, right? I mean, those are two really good guys. And Figueiredo, you know, I picked him to win, but I had a feeling, you know, Formiga, man, the line's close for a reason. He could be, he's knocked off contenders in that division before, but still never gotten his shot yet. So there's a lot of irony there. That's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, no doubt.
Is it a sport? Is it entertainment? Everything's pro wrestling.
Everything is pro wrestling. Everything is pro wrestling, man. And then none of this fight makes sense to me whatsoever. So I just don't get it, man. I honestly don't. Like, I get the fact that, yeah, Henry wants to go up and defend for, or had the opportunity to fight for another title. I get all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, man, like, you can't say you want to do that and save the 125-pound division, because you got to think, let's say he goes up to 135, right? Fights Marlon Moraes. Let's say he loses. correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been a champ fight where the loser has gone on to successfully defend their belt, right?
If
Yeah.
if you
DC,
consider
DC to find the heavyweight.
Off that technicality, perhaps. But I was going to say BJ. He came down after getting washed by St. Pierre in the rematch, and then had really two impressive, or his last two impressive, I should say, title defenses against Florian and Sanchez back down at 155. I don't know if that fits what kind of criteria you're talking about. That's the only thing that really comes to my mind.
Yeah, it's all shaky because, like, okay, just going over recent champ fights. You had, obviously, TJ, right? So he went down, lost the belt, or lost his opportunity for the second fight, and then ended up, popping and basically handing over his belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conor McGregor never defended anything. Who else? DC technically didn't defend both belts ever at the same time. So it's like, okay, let's say he goes up, he loses. Like, I think if Henry loses, they might just dissolve his belt in that whole division. Am I crazy for thinking that's a possibility?
No, not at all. That's in fact, I think, why this could be, actually, I would say this is why it could make sense. I would argue, because I'm with you, Matt. It doesn't make sense from our perspective. We want flyweight around, but if UFC doesn't want flyweight around, this makes perfect sense. And it ties off some knots as far as TJ just lost, so that championship already had an asterisk on it. Now he's got a positive test. Granted, we don't know what it is. That's already got an asterisk. So in a way, it actually does make sense. It just sucks because what that probably means for the flyweight division.
Very true.
Dan, so do you believe? So who you say is the GOAT then? Since you throwing asterisks out there, because I'm kind of coming around that DC. Is it because we don't got no red flags and the Jon wins tainted? And the champ thing is what brought him up on my book, because nobody was doing that to Stipe before, and he was that guy. So that to me, without the red flags and the tests, you got to put him in there, because everybody's been considered a GOAT has been either under suspicion, GSP, and went away, or they've been tested positive, either Jon or Anderson. He's the only one with no craziness.
Yeah, man. He's definitely got my vote. I'm biased. I'm a big DC fan in and out of the cage, of course. George St. Pierre, you really can't fuck with his resume. You know what I'm saying? Sorry to curse. I don't know, but you really can't mess. You can't mess with that resume. But yeah. Who knows, man? And who knows? Maybe if my boy BJ Penn stopped, treachery his career 10 years ago, he'd still be on the list, because ain't nobody accusing that guy of steroids, and he was the pioneer for this double champ stuff.
Exactly.
Him and Randy.
I keep telling Matt that DC, I think he's waiting to get Jon at heavyweight. The best thing for him is to fight him at heavyweight with no fights to warm up and go at it. If I'm DC, I'm like, I'll fight Jon. It's going to be at heavyweight, and we don't need no warm-up fight. We fight next fight.
Yeah, I'd definitely be there for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That would make the most sense for DC, right? So you don't want Jon to get comfortable at that weight class. But then again, DC's the type of guy. He was like, I want Jon at his best. So maybe he does. Maybe he would want him to get a fight in, get comfortable. DC is a confident competitor. So maybe he would want him to do that. I don't know. Let's try to ask him. But yeah, moving on from that madness. Also, the co-main, obviously, of that card, UFC 238, June 8th in Chicago, is Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Eye. Just real quick on this one, guys. Are we all staying in still?
Easy work.
Yeah. Eyes over at Extreme Couture. She's training with my guy Eric Nixick out there. Shouts to Eye. I think she could make it a more deceptively competitive fight, but I don't see her where she beats Shevchenko here, guys. I got Shevchenko. She's one of my favorite fighters, man. I'm biased when it comes to Shevchenko as well. Jessica don't have enough tools in the tool shed to get this done.
I've always been a fan of Jessica Eye, man. I always have, but she hasn't been able to consistently put her whole game together. So against an opponent like Valentina Shevchenko, you got to come with your A game. You got to be on point with everything you do. So if she does that, it'll be an interesting night. But I still think #andstill will be tweeted out multiple times.
Yeah. And just to clarify, the only reason why I say competitive, or I don't want to use the word close, but competitive, which Could being close to in a lot of people's eyes when you're talking about this match in context is just because Valentina, as much as I love her, and I agree with Kendrick, he nailed it. You know, that she's got more tools in the toolbox. But what I love counter fighters; they're my favorite type of fighters. But I worry because I know how poorly they score. And for one of the criticisms of our MMA judges being that they come from boxing, they really don't see exchanges as well. You know, they're not in MMA than they do in boxing because they would be awarding body work and counter punching a lot more in MMA, but we see it go to close fights. And to not the judge's fault, but being critical on Valentina, she's let rounds kind of go a little too close, whether she's paid for it, you know, in the end or not. So that's just that's ultimately going to always be my worry with Valentina.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree with you. So that's yeah, I think we're all on the same page on that one. So let's move on to the next big fight, different venue. UFC Fight Night, Minneapolis, June 29th, will be broadcast on ESPN, and it's a rematch between the former champ, Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley, against ruthless Robbie Lawler. To be honest with you guys, this is a matchup, out of all of the matchups today that were announced, this one is the one I did not expect to see this one coming. I don't necessarily, it's one I'm not mad at, but it's not one I wanted, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So it's, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on this matchup being announced?
It'll be interesting. We'll see if Tyron we're gonna have somebody from Tyron's camp on in the near future. We'll see what the thought process is for this. Was they don't do nothing on a whim. I'm pretty sure Tyron's pretty confident because last time he was in the cage with that man, he was and new and put him to sleep.
Yeah, great point. You know, that's my first question is, okay, what does Tyron have to gain? He already beat him clean, decisively. But to your point, that's a smart camp, man, and their game plan was really on point for that. And I was skeptical. I was on the side. I thought Rob, you know, you got to remember, guys, Robbie was on the height of his run when they met. And Woodley, even though I think history is only gonna, you know, I think Woodley's resume is gonna age like wine in history. He's gonna look better as time goes on. But at that point, I would argue, weren't quite sold because, you know, he had the TKO to Condit where his knee blew out, and all that was caused from damage from Woodley. You know, again, Condit being like a Robbie figure, real fan favorite, kind of hard to accept. You know, that kind of a non-decisive fight in many people's eyes. And then, you know, you have the Johnny Hendricks incident. He doesn't show up, and he gets a title shot off of a year layoff in that. You know, I think, which was good for Tyron. It allowed him to come in like a ninja and just take everybody by surprise, right? So maybe he thinks he can do that again, guys. As for Robbie and as for selling point and why they made the fight, I get it from that point actually more. Not so much, obviously, Robbie would maybe want to get that one back, even though he doesn't seem to take things as personal in his later years. Maybe he's just because he's getting older. But also I think it sells to the fans though, right, guys? Because kind of like what I said, Robbie was on that height and Tyron just kind of took it. And you just saw like it was like Stipe Miocic knocking out Verdum in Brazil. I mean, you know, Tyron just sucked the energy out of that room and wherever people were watching from because they were just blown away. So I think people kind of want to see that run back again, similar to how people would probably want to see the Askren Robbie run back.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think a lot of this also has to do with the fact that Tyron's teammates being in the mix now as well may have caused some of this stuff to, you know, shake out a little bit differently than what everybody was expecting. Because, like I said, this was a fight that wasn't even on my radar because of how clean Tyron beat him the first time. But, you know, they're both coming, like he's coming off a disappointing fight. Robbie's coming off a disappointing fight. They're not teammates. Well, they kind of, sort of used to be, you know, at ATT, but not really. But, you know, I'm not mad at it. At the end of the day, it's a fun fight. I think if Robbie doesn't get caught like he did in the first one, it could be an all-time classic fight with two guys that definitely won't try to, I mean, I don't see them out wrestling each other. Like, I don't see this being a wrestling match. I see this being a striking match. But who knows what could happen here? Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's smart of Tyron to take these kind of fights too, because he knows that the promotion's not in a hurry to get him back in there.
Yes.
So why not take fights that where, you know, I wouldn't want the contenders, even though I could see the UFC trying to use them for that gate, kind of like they used Maya and RDA recently. But he's got the name, he's got the resume. He's old, but not old in that sense, right, guys? As 36 or so. And so in the sense of fighting guys like Robbie or so forth, that makes sense because even as worst case scenario and Robbie gets it back, guys, I think that's a perfect matchup where even though I don't want to see Carlos Condit continue to fight if he really wants to get a win, if Tyron's on this proverbial quote-unquote slide, I think you could maybe even justify that matchup, right? Maybe that gets Carlos Condit up out of bed, and for Woodley, it's, again, beating a guy he's already beat and a big name that's going to propel him back to where he wants to be. And I'm thinking way too ahead, but just throwing that out there.
Well, thinking ahead, my last question on this before we move to the next one. So let's say Woodley goes out there and does the exact same thing he does in the first fight. Does that put him back in title contention again? I mean, he should be. I mean, largely a guy who defended his belt 5 times should be, immediate rematch status anyways. But let's say he goes out there and starts his Robbie again. Does he get a title shot in his next outing?
I would say
the champion is.
Yeah. It depends what Askren's doing.
He would, but if it's Kamaru, it would not be.
Yeah. That's true too, Kendrick. Yeah, depends who's champion. Depends what Askren's doing.
Yeah,
he's the new Wonder Boy position.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Dana's denying that he hates Askren, which means that he'll be happy to push him toward a title shot for Dana code.
Right. No, kidding. I was thinking we need to do a video. Maybe we'll do one later this week of shaking out the entire 170 division right now with all this match.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, we'll cross that bridge later on. So moving on to the next big fight announced tonight. Probably the biggest one on the board, I think, at least the biggest name, possibly, potentially, depending on your fandom or not. UFC 239, July 6th in Las Vegas, International Fight Week. The main events will be Jon Jones taking on, in my opinion, his most dangerous opponent left at 205 in Thiago Santos. Thoughts?
Man, that's yeah. I mean, it's funny though. I got to imagine if for people taking the flyer for Jon Jones to, lose, I got to imagine this is the kind of guy though, right? I mean, it's going to be some kind of fluke, crazy thing. A guy with knockout power who's dangerous, who's going to just throw, caution to the wind. And Thiago Santos does fit that bill. But as somebody who, respects Santos and loves how he fights from a critical level, let's just say I probably pick against him more than I pick for him. So yeah, it's no secret who I'm going to be siding with on that matchup, guys. But I'm curious what the public reaction is going to be to that.
Kendrick,
we just saw him fight a double guy with double figure losses. So this is par for the course. I think it's funny. Like I told Matt, I don't know who can beat Jon Jones or if that guy exists. But if he do exist, I guarantee you can count his losses on one hand. And people were not talking about that with the lead up to the Lionheart fight. I thought that was like asinine.
That is true. And man, I'll tell you this, even for someone who overthinks things in my position, and it's my job maybe too, but fucking hell, I gave up trying to think of what fighter type was going to beat Jon Jones after Daniel Cormier lost to him the first time. Okay, let's just put it that way. And that was a very short list. I think the list was only at a certain point. King Mo, I thought could possibly do it if he eventually made it over. But we kind of saw what happened as that transition happened. And then Daniel Cormier were the only two guys. Again, wrestlers who could maybe out wrestle Jon. But no, the only thing I'll say is here's the guy that's going to beat Jon Jones, guys. A short notice opponent. That is the only thing I'm even willing to say, and not even confidently. And that is because, not just because of the fluke and lucky punch factor that comes along with that, but because Jon Jones himself, we've seen it. He's declined fights against guys we know he could beat, and would later go on to beat them like a Chael Sonnen, because he is such a prep. He's such a prep nut, and that's actually one of the reasons I like most about Jon Jones. If you look at that list. That this would be toward the top is that he's that nut that he measures his opponent's reach and places it with blue tape marks around his house, so that when he's coming around corners, he's always got measure. He's never like getting that out of his head, and that's what's sick about him. So yeah, it's tough to go against that guy.
Yeah, I mean to Kendrick's point, I mean Lionheart did have double figure losses, but hey, Santos only has 6, so. Just saying, there's more of a possibility there if you're going by the double-figure losses thing. But
or moving up in the weight trend.
You still need more than one hand to count the losses, though, bro.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. But I think we can also all agree. I think this is his most dangerous opponent that he hasn't fought yet at 205. Outside of, who he hasn't fought yet, because he's fought DC twice. But I think this is the most dangerous opponent yet because I think Santos is just going to come forward. I think he's going to throw caution to the wind. He's going to say, hey, this is my chance to win this title, and I think my best opportunity is just to go after Jon Jones. And hopefully, this is the thing I said about the Lionheart fight, man. I was like, whoever the guy that's going to beat Jon Jones is going to be the guy that does not let him turn him into a sparring partner in there. Because Jon Jones makes you his sparring dummy like you're holding mitts for him while he goes to work. So as long as Santos doesn't let him get into that mode, we might see something special. But, again, we'll know within the first 30 seconds. Is he going to kind of lull Santos into that game of like, hey, I'm going to act like you're holding mitts for me while I go to work on you. So...
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying there, and we see that, especially because Jon Jones, for as good as he is, he doesn't have that one-punch power. So that pattern that you're stating, Matt, is definitely correct. But with Santos, I just have a hard time seeing him be disciplined. He's kind of did it in some fights to an extent, but he just seems like that guy where he's like, all right, I'm going to keep my hands up, I'm going to stay calm, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to swing, and he can't help himself, So I think it's going to force, it's for better or worse, probably for worse for him, but it's going to force let's just say more fun, a fan-friendly Jon Jones performance because he is, whether he is confident or an insecure rush, he's probably going to be rushing Jon Jones.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's take a poll, and of course, if anybody's out there in the chat, drop it as well. Let's go around the room. I'm going #and still.
I'll say same. Yeah.
All right, three and stills. Drop it in the chat on the YouTube live chat. And still for Jon Jones or and new for Santos. Let us know what you guys are thinking. And the last matchup that was announced today is also a pretty big one as well, and I think it's one that a lot of people were expecting. Amanda Nunes returns on that same card, July 6th, International Fight Week, against the only former champion she has not faced yet at 135, and that's Holly Holm. So, guys, I got to get your reaction to this one. I know where I stand on this one. I want to know what you think.
The quote will be official, undisputed quote. We don't got one on the guy's side. We're going to have undisputed quote. Dan Quote, greatest woman of all time.
Dan, what you think, man?
It's hard to argue, man. Like you look at it, and I want to say, it could be a different match because I just was speaking about discipline, and if anybody's got discipline, it's Holly Holm. Say what you will about her style, but she's really consistent, and she can win those judges' scorecards, by throwing that kind of volume, albeit kind of false volume a lot of the times. It's a lot of times somebody coming up short or a lot of key eyes more than contact, but still yet, if Amanda's not careful, she could pace on her. But Amanda's improved her boxing like crazy, man. And that's what's kind of the scary thing. She's not just a brawler in there like early in her career, obviously. Like her jab's always been good for the last 3 or 4 years now, but even just her ability to counter, stay calm in the pocket, dictate range. I kind of see it like playing out similar guys to possibly more violent, of course, because it's Nunes, but I see it playing similar to Jermaine Durandamy versus Holm at 208. That's why I see the kind of fight going. But
I don't think she's better than Jermaine. I was there at that fight live. I was Sweet Rose back Kate's side. I don't think she let Holly will counter her as much as she did Jermaine. That's why Holly will get smashed.
Yeah, that's true too. I just think that last fight aside, I think because it was Cyborg and whether or not Amanda was going to be the game plan or not, which paid off, Cyborg was going to bring that fight anyways. I just think that even though Amanda's addressed her cardio issues, I think she's still kind of worried in a certain point. They're not worried in a bad way, but she kind of reserves her tank. We've seen it in the other fights where she'll hold off, even if she's dominating like a Raquel Pennington. She'll keep the pace measured, or it's a close fight. She still keeps the pace measured, like against Val the second time around. So I guess that's why I'm saying, unless Amanda sparks off something real big in the first, I could see her just playing it smart and just making her eat right hands every time she kind of comes in. Kind of back to back to your point there, Kendrick.
I will say this: Colleen's not good at quick exchanges in the octagon. I know she was as a boxer, but I remember seeing her fight Raquel at don't get me wrong to them. I know that's when Ronda beat Kat, and she's never been good in tight spaces. So I see her get knocked out early because we know Cyborg is probably the best at all time in tight spaces. It didn't work out for her. And I keep telling Matt, look at when all these people get, when you see something happen to these ladies, they're at an age you've never seen them at. She's at that age. So it's about time for us to see something we hadn't seen before. Night.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the age, man. 'Cause, like even just the trend in general. Like, I was reading a tweet earlier today, guys, and I don't have the history in front of me, but like it was just like she lost she lost her title to Tate, loses to Shevchenko convincingly, beats Betchko Hea at bantamweight. From that, gets a featherweight title shot, loses the featherweight fight, beats no offense, I like me some Megan Anderson, but kind of a random unproven UFC featherweight. That win over featherweight gets her a bantamweight title shot, and it's just kind of hard to track, And I remember people used to give Frank Yeager a lot of crap. Like, oh, we're giving him a title shot of Jose Aldo after all the rematches at lightweight. But like, I think if those haters even still exist, I think all you got to do is kind of point to Holly Holm. And again, no offense to Holly, but like you got to kind of point to that. I'm like, hey, look at all the title shots she got. And I just mentioned that, guys, because to pay off a previous page note from before, that this is kind of why these double champs kind of mean less, because even though Holly, all respect to her, even if she beats Jareen Duranami for some vacant imaginary featherweight title back at UFC 208, she would have joined the list of Randy, BJ, and Conor McGregor at that time, before DC and these other other people gotten it or can claim to it. So it's, and again, not taking away from her, but again, you just kind of look at the roads and the context of history, and it doesn't exactly line up.
I think half of it's because of the newness of the sport. Because like Amanda, who's she gonna fight at 145? Like 10 years from now, we'll be laughing about that, But at today, in 2019, she got nobody to fight. All she can do is fight everybody that's got a strap, because they beat the undisputed. Because she beat the best at 125, all the ones at 135, and the best at 145. That's what you call a quote. It don't matter what somebody come do. Like if somebody come 10 years from now and they do some John stuff in whatever weight class, they're not gonna have these legends or names on their resume that she's got. So she took full advantage of it. And the fact that she said Ronda and Misha into retirement.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's all very true.
She had the undisputed resume, even with the cat. If I was her, I'd say this. Hey, I'm going to whoop Holly. I want to avenge I lost the cat, so Cat can get her shot again and just ride off to Brazil.
Why?
Oh yeah.
Because you're the champ, you can do that. You call the shot.
When was the last time Kat Zingano won a fight, though? When's the last time she won a fight? That's worse than Brock Lesnar getting a title shot against DC.
If she pulled for the rematch, they do it. It's just like Chael Sonnen. What did Chael Sonnen do at 205? Because he was a 185er to get a shot at Jon Jones.
Be active and be available.
Nunes might retire before Cat or anybody can work her way to contention. She's talking about retirement, and I
give her 2 more fights, 3 at the most.
You're right. I'm with that too. People forget that. I think with not just the sport being new, but also with females and stuff, and the biological clock and all that goes with it, man. I take a lot of these ladies serious. I take them a lot more serious than the males when they say retirement. Let's just say that. But real quick, kind of the point you guys are talking about. I agree with Kendrick. As far as she's just whether it's Holly or Nunes, more importantly, who we're talking about. They're just working with what they got, and you can't fault them for that. And I agree, and I'm not trying to fault them for that. In fact, it kind of falls in a similar argument of Demetrius Johnson when people try to tear down his resume, right? But the counterpoint is like, well, who's he? He didn't have there wasn't enough time for that division to have Shogun, who was like Jon Jones had to beat to help build him up, right? So it kind of always goes back to that argument. It feels like.
Yeah, the UFCs are not building these divisions properly. And the sport's still 25 years old. That's why because me and Matt cover both UFC and boxing.
Yeah.
And people in boxing talking about stuff when Ali was fighting and seeing his last fight against Trevor Burbick and all these crazy stories. There's no doubt it was a story. Man, I was out there with Chuck and Rampage fought, and maybe 2 people saw that's still in the game today.
Right.
And one of them probably been blackballed by now.
There you go.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we just need to, in terms of this 135-pound division, I think we just need to, I need to put that meme out there. We've been seeing the memes of the Avenged the Replaced. I need to make one for Jermaine. Maybe she'll come back. Maybe we'll see, the reverse of the time stone. And we'll see Jermaine come back into existence and just shock the world.
She's coming off a win.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, man, but I think for me in this fight, I said I know what I want to see out of this fight, and what I want to see is I want to see Holly Holm win just so we can have another rematch, because there's nothing else there really for me that's interesting. So I want to have some fun with it, Cyborg, who knows what Cyborg's doing, whether she's going to show up at WrestleMania or who knows, Lord knows what. But, you know, I hope it's a good fight. And I hope it's not Cyborg Nunes. I hope it's not that. I hope it's a good fight. You know, give me a few rounds of action. Let's see some back and forth. I want to see Holly at the top of her game. I want to see Amanda at the top of her game. You know, let's make it a classic fight like the Nunes Shevchenko fights.
Dude, if she beats Nunes, guys, especially if like she just like head kick KOs or like Rousey, like how much miles, you know, as far as getting 2 wins for the history books, like in any division, I think Holly Holm's got to be at the top as far as like 2 key wins, giving you so many miles, especially when you look at the comparison, the more crude comparison that I just laid out, that kind of deflates her body of work when you really kind of step back and look at it. You're like, wow, you look, well, she got that win against over that Rounder girl, which seems to age less and less, especially amongst hardcores as time kind of goes on, you know, and we see what the women's striking level probably should look like. But yeah, man, and again, taking nothing away from Holly, but that just would be crazy because she would get a bunch of credit, and deservedly so, because again, guys, back to Kendrick's point, you look at the overall history, it's a short history, and she would supplant herself firmly.
Superstar status off that just one head kick. It's crazy. It's amazing.
And after Topad that wouldn't this also that head kick because she came in with the pedigree because she's a boxing champion. So
of course,
she don't want to do it in both. So
that moment obviously launched her into the stratosphere. We all know that. Come on now. Yeah,
that's just for MMA people. She was already she already been on Ring Magazine twice in boxing. That's just for MMA people. She was already pretty solidified as a combat sport participant.
Are you really trying to argue her superstar status didn't elevate after that head kick landed? Miss me with that one, Kendrick. Come on now.
It's like Ann Wolf. Ann Wolf never stepped foot in the octagon. People know who she is in the boxing game because she be whooping ass.
That's
it's
just
like
in the boxing game. I'm talking. She became a crossover star. She was on talk shows and everything after that. She wasn't doing that before. Yeah, she was on Ring Magazine before, but she wasn't doing talk shows and everybody talking about Holly Holm. She wasn't meeting Jay-Z and Beyonce and not knowing who Beyonce was. If you remember that story.
That's like a top 5 promo or top 3 that UFC's ever done leading into that. That was going viral. Yeah.
Exactly. So it definitely shot her into the stratosphere. And I think, like they were saying, man, like 2 wins, like it'd be crazy if it happens. But all exciting matchups. Just to run it down once again, we're gonna wrap up here. For the fights that were announced today, UFC Ottawa, May 4th, Cub Swanson, Shane Burgos. UFC 238, Henry Cejudo, Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight title. That co-main will be Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Ai. Fight night, Minneapolis main event. Tyron Woodley versus Robbie Lawler 2, going down June 29th. That will be broadcast on Big ESPN. And UFC 239, July 6th, International Fight Week. Jon Jones, Thiago Santos, co-mained by Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm. If you're watching out there on the live stream, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate you in the chat. We got the and still for Jon Jones in the chat dropping out over there. So, hey guys, if you're watching, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing more live reaction stuff like this more often as whenever we can, whenever there's big breaking news that deserves it. Of course, every weekend, check out the full Slip and Dip podcast where we have 2 to 4 guests every weekend. You guys know what it is. So hit that subscribe button, click that bell, turn on the notifications. And we'll see you next time with more breaking news, or we'll see you this weekend with the next podcast where we already have 2 big names lined up for you guys. So we're trying to get that third. Trying to get the third. We got 2, trying to get the third. So stay tuned. Dan, thanks for coming on, man. Chopping it up with you. Been fun times. And it's time to go to bed.
No kidding. Always, man. Always a pleasure to talk to you two. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. I'll Kendrick.
Easy.
Hey.